Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the City of Everett Council meeting of January 10th, 2024. The City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington's Open Public Meetings Act. Community members are welcome to join either in person, remote via Zoom, or by calling in. For those who wish to participate in the future via Zoom, you'll find the instructions to register for the public comment on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Please note that we do not allow comment or any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focusing on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely. Here. Councilmember Bader.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Toohey.
Here.
President Schwab.
Here. At this time, I'd like to ask Councilmember Bader to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to ask Councilmember Toohey to read the land acknowledgement.
You bet. The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stohokshee people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open a motion to approve the minutes for January 3rd, 2024.
Councilmember Ryan moves the approval of the minutes from January 3rd, 2024.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bader will second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, President Schwab and Council. I have a few comments this evening. First, there are 3 board or commission appointments that I'm bringing forward to Council for concurrence. First, to the Citizen Advisory Committee, I'd like to appoint Alexis Boyes to position 1. To the Transportation Advisory Committee, I'd like to appoint Sonia Bodge to position 5. And also to the Transportation Advisory Committee, I'd like to appoint Vin No to position 6. And I'm asking for your concurrence. Thank you.
Councilmember Ryan moves approval of the 3 nominees.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any comments? Good. Councilman Ryan?
Thanks. I just wanted to give a shout out to District 2 resident Alexis for signing up to apply for the Citizen Advisory Committee. She's been recently getting engaged in the community and been doing a fantastic job with community engagement, with organizing, and just really working on getting the neighborhood informed on issues in the community. And I just really appreciate her engagement and her passion for her neighbors and community. So very happy to support today.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. Clerk, will you take the roll?
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes.
And thank you and congratulations to our 3 new volunteers. I appreciate your service. Next, I have an update related to our multi-use facility project. The application for our new multi-use facility fiscal advisory committee is open. At a previous meeting, as you remember, council requested the creation of this advisory body to provide independent recommendations and guidance on fiscal matters related to this project. Applicants will be evaluated on their expertise and experience in finance, economics, accounting, public policy, tourism, and other related or relevant fields. There are a total of 8 openings, which will be appointed by council and me, as well as 1 that will be appointed by the committee. The application will close on January 19th, and so for more information, you can go to everettwa.gov /boards and commission. I'd also like to mention that we have openings on our Diversity Advisory Board and our Civil Service Commission. So if you're looking to get engaged with the city, there's 3 great boards to get involved with. And then lastly, looking ahead to later this week and this weekend, there's some winter weather in the forecast. We might be getting some snow. I hope not. I know a lot of you, especially maybe the young people in the room, are looking forward to snow. Those of us that work at the city don't look as forward to snow because we want to make sure that we have a safe roads and safe environment for our community. We're also concerned about cold weather shelters. So we have emergency cold weather shelters throughout Snohomish County, and they're going to be open any night that the temperature is forecasted below 34 degrees. In Everett, there are 3 shelter locations. UCC is located at 2624 Rockefeller, and it has 40 beds available for cold weather, with some overflow if necessary. Everett Gospel Mission Women and Children's Shelter is located at 5126 South 2nd Avenue, and that can accommodate 5 families. Everett Men's Shelter is located at 3711 Smith Avenue with 25 beds available. Again, these are only available on nights that are below 34 degrees. Information about these cold weather shelters is updated on a daily basis and shared by Snohomish County on their website and social media, and we share that on our social media as well. In addition, both of our libraries, as well as Snow Isle libraries, are available as warming centers during the day. And the city updates on any impact related to inclement weather on our social media and website. So please take a look at everettwa.gov in case of snow to see what facilities may be closed in the event of extreme weather. So please stay safe, everyone. And with that, I have no further comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, Angie. Do we have anyone sign up to speak this evening?
Good evening, President Schwab. We do. We have a written comment, though, from Emily Simpson regarding item 6, and she would also like to speak to that item when we get to it on the agenda. And then we have one person online, Amy, if you could please unmute yourself and if you can turn your video on. And I will share my screen or my timer so you can keep track of the 3 minutes that you have to speak. In just one moment. Okay, and then just state your full name and city of residence, and you can go ahead.
Hi, I'm Amy Hube. I'm here to comment on the mayor's proposal to merge Everett Public Libraries with the Snow Isle Library System. The primary justification offered for this merger is one of cost savings, in that a merger would remove EPL from the city of Everett's budget. This proposed measure was shared with EPL library staff just this week. I'm a resident and homeowner in the Riverside neighborhood. When my husband and I moved to Snohomish County in 2017, we chose Everett because it is a unique standalone city with integrated services, a bit of an island in a sea of bedroom communities. We wanted to be here in a community that invests in transportation and arts and culture and support services and shared civic character. We didn't just want to live in a city. We chose Everett because we wanted to be part of a community. Our libraries are the beating heart of our community. EPL was established in 1894, only a year after Everett incorporated as a city. EPL is so much more than books and card catalogs, for those of us old enough to remember what those are. Our library keeps residents of Everett warm, safe, healthy, entertained, educated, hydrated, and above all, connected. It is a mistake to hand over our beating heart and expect another entity to handle it with the same care and consideration that EPL has exhibited for more than a century. Yes, it is the city executive's job to make and execute a balanced budget, but this place is so much more than line items on a spreadsheet. It's a community, and our budgets are a reflection of our values and priorities as much as they are evidence of fiscal responsibility. Budgets are moral documents. What does it say about the soul of our city if we have endless money for police, but divest ourselves of our public library system? Yes, Everett has some highly visible and complex issues to tackle. City police may be one part of how the city addresses those issues. I'm kindly asking the City Council not to rely on police as the main or only way we address our issues. A friend with insight into the library's embedded social workers said that group has proven demonstrably more effective versus other embedded social worker programs in the city, in large part because the people interacting with support services are in library spaces voluntarily and opting in to contact with support. The library is where we build community because it's a place where people choose to be. 3 minutes isn't much time, so I leave council members with questions to consider. What makes Everett unique versus surrounding areas? How many promises can the city break with its residents before residents despair, divest, or leave? How many programs directly benefiting residents are we willing to cut so we can siphon a greater share of the city's operating revenue to police? Why is our mayor, who was elected on her record of compassionate direct services with our city's homeless youth, opting to expand the carceral state in our city? And finally, how much of our unique community character are we willing to sacrifice on the twin altars of fear and bottom line thinking? Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And that's all we have until item number 6.
Thank you. Moving on to council comments. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, first, thank you to our public commenter and actually to anyone who comes to us with their insights and perspectives on how we balance all of the trade-offs, how we, through funding and various measures, choose what kind of city we want to live in. And I particularly appreciate the articulation of the kind of city that our commenter wanted to live in. So thank you, and I certainly encourage more of that. Those are exactly the core questions that are going to be on the front of our mind for the next several months. And a quick thank you to Deirdre and PAC 777, Cub Scout PAC 777, for coming here this evening and getting involved and standing in for a moment with the mayor. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
I'll be brief, and just want to say that what a joy it was to come in and see the Cub Scouts sitting in our chairs. Thank you guys for coming.
Councilmember Vogely.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're enjoying yourselves. I'm excited for the first Alliance for Housing Affordability meeting of the year, and it occurs on January 24th. Among other items, we will be discussing the gathering and dispersal of census data for every city and town in Snohomish County. Chris Collier has downloaded everything needed and created a system for cities to get the best and most current census information about their respective cities. They just have to ask. And I realize right now I sound like a commercial, but I wrote this myself. If a city is paying a consultant gobs of money and getting mediocre results with, for instance, their comprehensive plan, Chris is just a phone call or email away. I can't praise enough the quality of work at the reasonable price of membership. Still sounds like I'm trying to sell it. Utilizing Alliance for Housing Affordability is and will help our budget woes. It could. And so that is definitely one reason I bring that up. Plus, and I know that Jennifer already knows Chris from previous experience with our city and others. And then Frank is new and getting involved. So, and I can't remember his last name, sorry, but he works for the city. And then, regarding emails from constituents, I've seen a couple about nuisance properties, and I'm curious, and I don't think that there's an answer right now because I didn't ask this beforehand. If Mr. Miller, who has been here before, has had any resolution to his claim about 2519 Fulton. I spoke with him recently, and apparently the dead tree is still standing and the lawn gets mowed occasionally. As the mayor mentioned, wind and snowstorms are a-brewing, and I imagine a vacant home of 15 years could pose a significant threat to the safety of neighbors in such a storm. I'm sure we have many derelict properties in Everett, both vacant and lived in, but this is one that I know about, so I can bring it up and ask about it. So I am, again, don't expect an answer right now, but wanted to put on the radar again. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was going to mention to Councilmember Fosse, she gave her first public speaking lesson today, and that was how to turn the mic on for our Cub Scouts. So thanks. Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. Just a couple things. Attended the Riverside neighborhood meeting last night with the mayor was there, our guest speaker, and that's actually my home neighborhood. A lot of questions about traffic, so some good info, and we look forward to, I think, city traffic engineer and others joining us next month in Riverside. So great meeting. Attended Port Gardner with Councilmember Ryan. I'll let her talk more about that since that's her neighborhood. Also wanted to say a thank you to whatever city staff, and I imagine it's many, who helped to, there was an encampment on Rucker just a few blocks over. This constituent connected me about, and before I could even connect with city staff, I think they connected with the folks who were camping there and hopefully got them to better circumstances. And finally, I hope, this is coming up on the weekend, hope everyone will find an appropriate way to commemorate Martin Luther King on Martin Luther King Day as we come up to it this Monday. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Great, good evening, everybody. See the Cub Scout Pack 777 has departed the building, but I was glad to see them here, and it was great to hear their little voices during the Pledge of Allegiance. Always cute. Thank you, Mayor Franklin, for mentioning the cold weather shelters. Also wanted to share that they're also looking for volunteers. So if folks have the capacity to volunteer at the shelters, they're usually, most of them are operated by the county, and Tyler Verda at the county is the volunteer coordinator. So if people have the bandwidth that they can volunteer, they would definitely appreciate extra hands on deck to make sure it moves along smoothly. Yes, I attended the Port Gardner Neighborhood Association meeting on Monday. It was an incredible turnout. There's only one other instance that I can think of where the cafeteria, Sequoia, was that full. So folks organizing the event did a really great job getting the word out to the neighbors. The topic at hand was concerns and public safety concerns and frustrations with the street along Oaks and Lombard near Andy's place, and some frustrations about street level issues and trash and just some things that come along with facilities like that. And so I know that the mayor and her staff the staff's been working on putting together a recommendation about possibly including a buffer zone around that area. And the recommendation is likely going to be coming at the end of the month, is my understanding. And I thought it was, the folks from Compass did a really phenomenal job of fielding questions and giving a better understanding about the services that they do provide at Compass. And it was a really helpful reminder that if it weren't for Andy's place, the 82 residents that are there literally don't have anywhere else to go, and they would be on the streets of Everett, and that's definitely not a place where it's safe or healthy for them to be. So, and there were also good reminders from the crowd that I really appreciated about delineating between the people who are living in Andy's place and the services that they're receiving, and the issues that are happening literally on the corners and the sidewalks outside, and making sure that those two things are not mixed together always. So I appreciate Chief DeRoos being there, and Nate, I'm forgetting his last name, and Ben Breeden was there from our homelessness coordinator staff, and just did a really phenomenal job of bringing the community together to talk about solutions and things that we can all do, and that we can all work together. So kudos to that. There's definitely more work to do, but a very good way to bring everybody together. Over the weekend, anecdotally, I attended the Tips game, which was a lot of fun. We beat the Thunderbirds, which is always great. But after the event, as everybody was pouring out of the arena and going up along Hewitt, I was thinking a lot about the city and passing by closed businesses, and folks were just like, they kept walking, presumably to their vehicle at some point. And I didn't see folks like going into different venues post a game or just enjoying a bite to eat or whatnot. And so it made me think a lot about how I would like to make a request that we expedite the discussion on exploring a vacancy tax in Everett, because I think there's a lot of shuttered buildings and businesses downtown that are unnecessarily vacant. And so I think that if one of our best public safety measures is a bright, vibrant, active, and activated downtown. And to do that, we need more spaces and cooperation between building owners and tenants to make sure that those vacancies are filled. So I think that would be for our Parks and Quality of Life Committee for the discussion. So that's all I have today. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
Councilmember Schwab, really quick, sorry, may I?
You may.
Is that okay? a friendly amendment to also bring in not just vacant storefronts, but vacant homes as well. Okay, that's all.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Tui, you have the floor.
Thank you. Not too much, but I did want to thank the constituent Amy that spoke tonight about the library. I think, I'm speaking for myself, but I think most of us feel really fondly of our library system. And certainly when we have considerations that we're going to be thinking about, we'll take it very, very seriously. And really happy to hear that the embedded social workers are being successful at the library. And that's a great program that we have put in place. So I want to thank her for that. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. I just have a few things. Just a reminder, we have an MLK March on January 15th. Starts at 11 a.m. at the Longfellows Building, which is the area just south of the Memorial Stadium / Aquasox Stadium. I want to just recognize, and it was brought up earlier by Councilmember Ryan, some of the difficulties that our vacant landowners have. They put fencing, they put signs, they apply for a permit, and then they still get encampments and other trash and other things are dumped on the vacant land that they're responsible for. And of course, our permit process is, as we're doing our best, but it extends it, so we're kind of compounding the problem at sometimes. And I know that the staff is addressing it, and I know there's a lot of hard work to be there. So I know it's a tough issue, Mayor, so I appreciate your staff working on that. But I just wanted to recognize some of the challenges that we have there. Also, I wanted to address the Multi-Use Facility Committee. As you guys know, that they're 4 appointees from council. At the close of applications on the 19th, the mayor's staff will be processing the applications and they'll present us the list. And my understanding is we'll select the first 4. And currently my thought is that we'll go ahead and just ask you to submit 4 names from the list to our administrative assistant, and then we'll tally up, and then we'll submit the top 4 names for a vote. So, thank you, that's all I have. Moving on, do we have administrative report?
Yes, a couple things. So a little legislative update, 3 days into session. I heard for some folks, it feels like 3 weeks already. We're city staff, myself and our lobbyists and others are working on providing some remote testimony for Senate Bill 5923. That is a bill that relates to providing education to 7th and 9th graders on the risks and lethality of fentanyl and other opioids. So we're hoping, and I think we will, have a student member of our Youth Advisory Commission who will testify, as well as a staff member who can speak to, sort of those links between what happens in the city with fentanyl and experiences of youth and just really their lack of awareness of the severity of that particular drug, as well as opioids, because there isn't education required as part of health standards right now on fentanyl, opioids, meth, et cetera. So that hearing that we'll have some folks testify on is tomorrow at 1:30. So that's your brief little legislative update of kind of a focus this week. At last week's council meeting, there was an individual here in Chambers, who spoke, Evan Reed, who spoke about the Bunker Arts Collective, and we have a meeting with him this week scheduled with a number of staff members who are all excited to continue that conversation. So some park staff, economic development, communications engagement. So we're looking forward to that conversation. Glad that he came here and made that connection. So linked a little bit to last week, I just wanted to share a reminder related to our police department, our police officers. And you see it when the chief is up at the podium. He's got that body cam on his uniform. That's true for all of our uniformed employees that work in operations. They've got body cameras. And our city policy mandates that those cameras are activated during law enforcement activity, whether they're dispatched or self-initiated. So in Everett, they're basically always on if it is related to their law enforcement work. Okay. My other notes are just in case you ask, so that is all that I have for my administrative update. Thanks.
Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. The body cam policy, that is Everett specific, I reckon, or do you know if that's in the legislature?
It's Everett specific. It's our policy.
Okay, I'm
Yeah, just as
very
the-
glad that we have that, and I have very specific reasons that I'm glad for that, so thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Vogely.
Councilmember Fosse.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate the weekly update on the legislative weekly focus. That's great.
Okay, great.
Second.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, well, it was brief, so hopefully that's the bar, like just one thing.
Any other
Thanks.
brief questions for a brief answer? Mm. Thank you. Moving along to our city attorney. Do we have anything for us tonight?
There's no report from the legal department, but we are requesting a 5-minute executive session to discuss a potential litigation matter pursuant to RCW 4231I with possible council action to follow.
Okay, onward to our 4 consent items that are before you. Do I hear a motion to move forward with the consent items?
Council Bader moves the 4 consent items.
And Councilmember Tui seconds that.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Clerk, will you take the roll?
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes?
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Now we'll move on to our action items. Action item number 5, authorize the mayor to apply for grant funding and adopt a resolution that designates authorized representatives to act on behalf of the city of Everett and sign all necessary documents with respect to the 2025 through 2027 fish barriers removal grant from the Thornton A. Sullivan Park Culvert Replacement Project in the amount of $358,500. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I hear a motion, a second. Do I have any questions, comments?
Well, just a general comment that for those who are not familiar with it, we have a lot of streams in and around the city that have been diverted underground and made inhospitable to salmon and other things, including the river otters and that sort of stuff that are common in the lake there. So this is a part of a general thrust to do that. It's going to take advantage of some efforts that the DOT is doing in some nearby areas because these are areas that were put underground in I-5 and maybe even the interurban interurban rail a long time ago. So a positive thing that way. There will be some impacts on the park, and I think that stuff will be well thought out and well managed and should be a benefit for everybody, including returning some nature to Thornton Sullivan Park that the city purchased something over 100 years ago. So that's kind of my general context on that. I look forward to learning more about that. Thanks to Jennifer Gregerson and administration for getting me some more information on that, because that's a topic near and as somebody who monitors the lake during the summer as a volunteer, that's near and dear to my heart.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Clerk, will you take the roll?
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes?
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Action item number 6, approve a settlement agreement for the acquisition of the Waits Motel. Attorney Kenan Williams will be on Zoom to answer any of the questions. At this point, do I have any public comment? Or do I need to do a motion first?
You can do it either way.
Okay,
Public comment's
We'll do
fine.
public comment first, thank you.
Yes, so we have Emily, if you could please come to the podium. And state your full name, city residence, 3 minutes to speak.
There you go. My name's Emily Simpson. I live in the Waits Motel. And so sometimes begging from door to door is the only way to find shelter. Your decision to acquire this property has already been made, so I'm not going to pretend that coming up here will accomplish anything other than just entertainment. 12 people, including myself, are residing there. Today, I'm terminated as manager. I will no longer be providing security or organizing with Community Assisted Protection Network. 1 month after my arrival at the Waits Motel, we were taken off of the nuisance list. At 6 months, the progress and momentum in the right direction came to a sputtering halt. This has nothing to do with anything but money and political power. This is government overreach. Seems like citizens worship, there's some citizens that worship the government and support anything that you do. No matter who or what you crush, you're more dangerous than anyone I encountered at a motel with a history of decades of crime. You don't acquire things on the free market like the rest of us. You use tactics to force. Doug and I truly agree with compliance. That's why we worked so hard chipping away at the problems, creating, learning, adapting, suffering Everett like many businesses, homes in this county. Most of you didn't even have the balls to come to one of the barbecues that we set up and see the deeper components going on there. Maybe you live in a privileged bubble, because when you're poor and downtrodden, safety and security is a luxury. I don't have time to unpack that for you, but I brought these flowers for you. There's one for all of you. I want you to give your flower to a local soul whose heart conceives hope. And thank you very much. And hopefully I will be relocated from this county.
And thank you for your comments. Okay, is there any?
And that concludes public comments.
Okay, thank you. At this time, do I have a motion to move forward with action item number 6?
Councilmember Bader, so moves.
Second the motion.
Okay, hearing a motion and a second, are there any questions or comments?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Do we get to hear stuff about it first, or just start the questions?
We don't have a briefing plan because we've talked about it so much in the past, and you've received several email updates on every aspect of this, but I'd be glad to answer questions on the legal process. I believe we have Julie Willie here to answer any questions on the social services aspect.
Okay, then I will open, let's see here. The email that I sent, unless you have it already opened. Because I did ask a couple questions, and I'll ask them again out in the public.
Sure.
My computer is not.
If, I can provide the answers that, if you want, just, it's up to you.
Okay. Sorry for taking your time.
Do you want to wait? We could,
Does somebody else have a question?
someone else have questions?
Then I'm totally willing.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Councilmember Ryan?
Great, thank you. I am curious about the what's next in the process, and I know that, with that the document's already been signed by all parties, that this would put it into effect immediately. So I think the public and the neighbors would probably like to know as well on the what next. So what's next?
Is that a question about what will be done with the property after we acquire it?
Yeah, I guess I'm picturing or asking more of what's the 24-hour plan, the 10-day plan, the 3-month plan, a year from now, what can
The
neighbors
immediate plan
expect?
is for Common Street to continue working with the remaining residents to get them into suitable housing.
And then after that happens, what's next
Well,
after
then
that?
the property will be vacant, and what happens to the property will be up to the council.
So maybe Julie and I can help answer what I'm hearing your question is. So 24-hour plan is that not much really changes. You did hear that, Emily was employed by the former owner, so not the motel manager anymore once the city acquires the property. But other than that, our partnership with Common Street will continue, and Julie's team of social workers will continue working with them and providing options, connecting with those residents to help them find, permanent housing solutions, but in some cases, temporary solutions as well. You said 24 hours, and then kind of what were your other timeframes?
Just then after folks are moved out, then what happens?
I don't know if maybe you want to take that, and I can jump in on the longer term.
Yeah, well, when we have ownership, then we will have the opportunity to go into the vacant units and begin kind of assess the quality of the units and what might need to be done. Is there asbestos? Is there lead? What are the challenges with the sewer or the fire safety systems? And just do a better assessment and have a better idea of the condition of the building. But because we haven't owned it, we haven't been able to do that yet. So that would probably be that 10-day, 30-day assessment, but alongside of still helping the residents to have plans for relocation.
Great. And then are there plans to, if it's in good shape, are there plans to keep it then?
We haven't got any further than,
Yeah, we haven't got further than that, though, knowing the limited knowledge that we have of the state of some of the units, we have been able, the owner has allowed us to on-site to board up some of the vacant units. We have seen the inside of some of those units, and they are not okay. And so, if we determine that it's really not a healthy environment overall, we would very likely not keep that property in its current state. We would demolish it and do something else with it, but we have to have that time to assess the state of the property. Obviously, rehouse everybody and make sure everyone's safe first, and then we will be sure to inform you and the neighborhood groups of next steps. I think we're planning on being at the Northwest Neighborhood Meeting in February to hopefully answer neighbor questions, and our goal is to stay in very close contact with Northwest Neighborhood, Delta Neighborhood, and of course the council and the community as a whole on next steps for this property.
Great.
And then just as a reminder, maybe extra details not warranted, I don't know, but council sets the zoning and land use for that parcel, and that's definitely part of the comprehensive plan discussion through the rest of the year. So we know the zoning today, but it is among the alternatives. It could be zoned for different density. So that's a decision point that you would have. And then any disposition of, any sale of the property would come through the council, so you'd have a voice in that as well. So.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mind if I go with Councilmember Vogely, because are you ready for your question?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'll just read what I wrote and then, let's see. I wanted to make sure that the purchase agreement that we're voting on today is the end-all, be-all of the items to be signed, because there can be purchase and sale agreements, but because of where we are in the legal process, it is just the document that we can see in the agenda online. And I was just double checking that was true. It is, but you can say it out loud.
It is.
Okay. And so I just wanted people to know that I'd asked that question. And it says, within a few days after council approval, the Waits Motel property will transfer to the city by entry of a decree of appropriation. What does within a few days mean? And I guess why was it not, you don't have to say why it was written that way, but.
Well, a check needs to be cut by the clerk's office
Okay.
and delivered to Superior Court along with the decree of appropriation, and I expect that will happen probably Friday. If not, then because Monday's a holiday, it will happen Tuesday.
Ooh, and because, wait, this isn't an ordinance, it's something else, so there's not the 15 days. I know the mayor
Correct.
and the other people have already signed, so as soon as the council says yes, then it's a done deal. And the check,
And
I mean,
the
I know
check is
all of the
paid,
other
and
steps.
the decree of appropriation, which
Right.
is also in your packet, is signed by our attorney and filed with the court.
Okay, so it's not the 15-day wait thing?
No,
it's
correct.
just
That is correct.
Get your signatures in, people, and checks and all that, okay. And I did watch the recent committee meeting that happened before last week's council meeting. And I'm delighted to hear the progress of relocation. Have the folks received any written or binding communication that the city of Everett will provide services and/or financial support for relocation after the sale is complete? And for how long and for up to what amount? So I know that there have been many items, many times that you said, we're doing what we're doing, don't worry about it. And so my question, again, is that in writing for the residents?
We're absolutely going to be providing a document to each of the residents that's uniformly created based on our work with Common Street and what each individual is available to them based on public assistance and their individual circumstances. So without a doubt, that is coming.
And I guess with, in regards to Councilmember Ryan's questions, is there a timeline for?
We want that to come as soon as possible, and so we are working with them to get a draft and to make sure that we have the time to assess it and make sure that we feel comfortable with what is in document. And again, each of these individuals have different circumstances, and so it doesn't mean every single person will get the exact same benefit, because some people will need different benefits, but they will uniformly be considered based on the law and the needs of the individuals. So I would anticipate that document coming to them within the next week or two.
Okay. And considering it's a financial document and it will be money paid out by the city, then or does the city council have to approve that?
I don't think it'll be that clean, like the document will come and it'll exactly say what they're getting, because some people haven't engaged with us yet to create a plan. So there may be a secondary document down the road. If it's determined it's a high amount of money, perhaps we will have to come back to council, but none of that has been determined yet. We're doing it as fast as we can based on individuals' desire to work with us, and that's kind of where we sit.
In an amount not to exceed, I've heard that many times, like with consultants, we'll pay them in an amount not to exceed such and such amounts of dollars. And if we're getting a uniform document to pay for people, mightn't there be a not to exceed 5 years or not to exceed $500,000 out of CIP4, that type of thing? Like, this has just come into my brain right now. I didn't have this question earlier to ask, so apologies.
I don't have that answer. Since you just got the question, I don't yet have the answer.
Makes sense, but I want to make sure you understand the question, and I'm looking a lot at Jennifer too.
She's typing for us so that we understand the question.
Because we've said yes. The vote was yes to continue with Common Street with that amount of money. And so there is an amount of money that will be spent on this project that isn't Common Street, that is relocation. So it would seem that it would be more than, I don't know, $50,000. And so then therefore it would come back to us somehow. So.
Because it's not going to be one lump sum paid to all of the residents as one lump sum, and because the amounts will vary by individual or family and their individual circumstances, I doubt that we'll exceed, I highly doubt that we'll exceed that 50,000 amount in any one payment. If we do, then that will I'd have to look at our purchase policy, probably come to you, but I think that this is a fluid situation, and we will make an assessment of each person's need, and we've already committed to doing what we're going to do under the Uniform Relocation Act. So I think that's the best answer I can give you right now.
I can certainly say that we are going to continually share with council what the process is, what we're spending on this, how it's going. So regardless of whether we need council's approval to spend money, or I will be very happy to share that information with you throughout the process, and certainly in our meetings monthly that I have with each of you individually.
I might also add that some individuals are and will be continuing to have public assistance available to them, and so their circumstances may not require city public assistance. So that if it is city public assistance, then that's what we will provide for them. But if they have other public assistance available to them, that's what we will help them ensure that they have moving forward.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
You good? Thank you. Councilmember Fossey was on the.
And this may be entirely preliminary, but in a lot of this waiting game, of, the process already going forward, and then you'll need to do an assessment, and yes, things are up in the air, and you have to figure things out. Has there been any other precedents for, I know neighborhoods oftentimes don't like the concept of, oh, if it is not something that is a salvageable building, and then you just sell it to the, biggest developer, bidder. Is this something where it's going to be an opportunity to engage the public and solicit, ideas and concepts and proposals, and have more of that kind of public engagement, or, request, for nonprofit development partnerships or anything like that? I mean, I know that's really, really preliminary, but do you know of any other case examples where things like that have happened?
I don't know of any case examples, but I can tell you that this is a special project, right? This has been a nuisance property for decades. Our neighborhoods are really passionate about this property. I know you all are very passionate about this property. I am. And so I believe that whatever we recommend to you, you will have a lot of input on whether, how we engage the public on that. I certainly don't see a process where we're like selling to the highest bidder. That is not something that I envision in the best use for this property, for the community that has been suffering from the challenges of this property. Because of our comp plan timing is right now, it is a nice timing, I guess. Well, when we are looking at that, you will see, we will be sure to highlight, this is exactly that property location that we're talking about. This is the former Waits Motel. And so you will see whether you want to increase density or not. I have an opinion about that I can share with you at a different point, but I certainly don't want to see something there that would be a further nuisance to a community that has already struggled with such a challenging property for years.
Council President?
Go ahead.
I don't know if any of you were on the council when the city sold the property that eventually became the Marriott Hotel behind the police station. But that's exactly what happened then. There was a lot of input. The city decided what use they wanted that property to be put to. They didn't just sell it to the highest bidder. They decided what would be best for the city on that property, and they sold it with a number of conditions in the purchase and sale agreement to make sure it was developed in a way that met the city's needs. And I would expect that we would do something like that here.
Fantastic, that's good to hear. I just want to make sure that, if there is precedence for that kind of engagement, or being really intentional about the future of it, I think that kind of gives, community a little bit of hope. So, thanks.
Thank you for your questions. Councilmember Zarlingo was next.
Yeah, I guess we talked a lot about some of the actual costs, but if I understand it correctly, whether it's city assistance or general public assistance, the guiding principle is that the people who have been there will be going from a motel environment that's got a lot of iffy conditions to actual apartments or similar things with kitchens and appropriate services, and that they will be paying what they are now or nothing more, that we will support for a period of, I think it's 42 or 48 months or so, to help them stabilize. I mean, I guess I want to make sure that I'm understanding our general thrust as opposed to specific numbers or limits. Have I got that correct?
Well, you were just real specific while wanting to be general. So I think that speaks to what Julie said about, we're working on that document that will provide to all of the folks who were residents at the Waits. And totally true about that idea of sort of no harm. So if you were paying this much, the idea is that you wouldn't pay more than that. Julie spoke to the fact that there might be a lot of other types of public assistance that folks could qualify for, but for a lot of reasons, it's just that those systems are so hard to access.
And
That's
Common
what-
Street may be helping them do
Yeah,
that.
well, and Julie, our team too,
Okay.
all our folks at the city as well, that all of them are working in really good partnership. So, so in some cases, it may not be the,
Right.
the city, but it may just be like helping folks access what they already qualified for, being in the right place. So, maybe they just needed to be in a healthier living environment, and then they're able to make those connections themselves even.
Okay.
That could be the case. So anyways, that's my nice roundabout answer to your question, and I'm glad to maybe, so basically, we're like at this midpoint where we're working on that document and working with Common Street and legal and all of that, so we don't have anything more specific, but hopefully that kind of reaches the spirit of what you were asking.
That's what I wanted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogel, you had your hand up again, yeah.
When we got the appraisal back, way back in August? No, whatever. Did that not have anything about asbestos and all of that? Because when we did the appraisal, I mean, they go inside the buildings and do all the
Yeah,
things.
I don't have it in front of me, obviously, but the appraisal did take into consideration some of the costs that would be involved in remediating some of the problems on the property that were known,
Yeah.
including primarily the fentanyl and meth contamination.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Which those units have been vacant since we
Right.
were made aware of that.
Yeah, and remediated. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Good discussion, good questions. Any more comments or questions at this point? Okay, hearing none. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, would you take the roll?
Vice President Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, on to, I guess that it does our action items. Next is our briefing, item number 7, on revenue options. We have our Finance Director, Susie Haugen, here to brief us. Welcome. And you're
just-
not here at 9 o'clock at night. We actually got you in earlier.
And just before Susie and Heidi get started, I wanted to make one comment in response to our speaker. The 3 revenue options that our finance team will be discussing are in no way because we are trying to divest ourselves of these services. If we're talking about the library or the fire department, these are essential services. The city is not trying to get rid of our fire department, say we don't need it, or get rid of our library, say we don't need it. These are services that we desperately want to protect and grow as our city grows. And so the options that you are being presented are to protect library, fire, overall city budget, and there's 3 different options that, for you to consider. There's no recommendation from me. They're just options for us to create a more sustainable government, and glad to have Susie and Heidi here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Susie?
Thank you, and good evening. So before I get started, I wanted to touch on the consolidation with community transit that's been under investigation for some time now. While it will deliver opportunities to improve services, it's not included in the revenue options I'll be briefing tonight because it would not reduce the general government's structural deficit. And a briefing on this consolidation is scheduled for January 31st, so you'll be hearing more about that then. And tonight, Heidi is going to start with a review of the general government's structural deficit and some steps that we've taken over the past 10 years to close that gap. And then I'll review the revenue options and go over next steps.
Okay, general government 6-year forecast. This chart illustrates the deficit forecast for the general government after accounting for an estimated prior year budget variance of $7 million annually. Deficits are projected to grow from $12.9 million in 2025 to $35.8 million in 2030. I do want to emphasize the $12.9 million gap that we must close in 2025. We understand that there is a strong interest to increase existing services or even provide new services, but even just maintaining our existing services will be difficult. Producing a balanced budget and maintaining these service levels in 2025 will require us to repeat many of the unsustainable choices that we've made over the last several years, or we can pursue revenue options. Go ahead. This briefing is really about revenue options, but I do want to take a moment to recognize some of the key deficit reduction measures that the city has undertaken over the past 10 years. Examples of this include implementing a high deductible health plan, as well as adding a health benefit premium for all city staff. We did add a $20 car tab fees to help fund our overlay program. We entered into public-private partnerships with Snohomish County and the Port of Everett to support our Jetty Island, and Volunteers of America to manage our senior center. We reduced services such as eliminating lifeguards at Silver Lake, Bookmobile, a library outreach program. We implemented 2 rounds of the voluntary separation program for city staff, and we also reduced staffing through attrition. We eliminated most of our recreation programs and closed the swim center. We added fundraising positions to both the animal shelter and the library. Donations raised from animal services are now funding or helping fund the shelter's veterinary program. We conducted 2 rounds of soliciting ideas from staff as well as the community to improve fiscal sustainability. One occurred in 2014 and the other in 2018. We also froze maintenance and operations, or M&O budgets, for most departments in 9 of those 10 years. So as you can see here, the city's efforts have been significant, but it hasn't been enough to resolve our structural deficit and achieve fiscal sustainability.
So question, so that's the short list.
Yes, there is
There's
more.
quite a long list of things that we've been doing over the years, isn't there?
Yes, there is quite a much longer list, and lists of dozens of even small items as we look to leave no stone unturned in the effort to balance the budget.
Thank you.
So tonight's briefing will be in most respects the same information presented at a council retreat and to the Fiscal Advisory Committee in 2020, as well as council orientations in 22 and at a council briefing last May. So while the numbers have been updated over time, the material should look familiar to everyone. And I would also like to point out that while the focus and urgency is certainly in creating a path towards fiscal sustainability, it's important to keep in mind that in addition to making progress towards reducing the general government deficit, there may be opportunities to enhance services, achieve new efficiencies through economies of scale, or make capital investments that the city could not otherwise afford. None of the options we'll be discussing would include reducing services. So the first revenue option we'll discuss is annexation to the Snow Isle Library System. Snow Isle serves more than 800,000 residents in Snohomish and Island County. Everett currently has reciprocal borrowing with Snow Isle, as it does with many libraries, but it is the only city in Snohomish County that currently operates its own libraries. I wasn't able to get the 2024 levy numbers in time for this briefing, so the numbers I'll be presenting still reflect 2023 rates. I'll be updating the analysis as new information becomes available, so please bear in mind that the numbers will change from these that I'm presenting this evening. The 2023 levy rate for Snow Isle is 31 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. If we apply Snow Isle's levy rate of 31 cents to the city's 2023 assessed value of $26.8 billion, approximately $8.3 million in property tax revenue will be generated. This would exceed the amount that the city's forecasts for library operations in 2025 by $1.9 million. Annexing to Snow Isle could benefit both the city and the community through potential deficit reduction, incorporating the economies of scale of Snow Isle's larger library system, and additional property tax funding for library services. If the city were to seek annexation into Snow Isle, how those additional funds would be used would be a key point of negotiation. Our libraries represent an important and well-loved public service, and we understand that there is interest from council and in the community for delivering more rather than less library services. This is leading us to explore any opportunities like annexation with Snow Isle to protect or grow services. Unfortunately, without significant change in general government revenues or our service delivery model, the city is not in a financial position to enhance or expand services without sacrificing services in other areas. So what would this mean for the average homeowner in Everett? Still using the 2023 levy rates and the average value of a single-family residence in Everett, annexation to Snow Isle would cost a property owner about $171 per year, and divesting the city of the cost of library services would reduce the deficit by about $6.4 million, which represents about 1/2 of the 2025 projected deficit.
Yeah, could we go ahead and finish the library portion, and then can we have questions after each section then?
Certainly, and that does conclude
Okay, yeah, great.
what I
Thank
have
you.
for the library.
Ben, you
Thank
read my mind. You must have had the slides ahead of time. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Quick question, this annexation would involve a public vote?
Your microphone, please.
Sorry. Quick question, this annexation would involve a public vote?
Yes, it would.
majority
And
vote?
all of the revenue options I'm presenting tonight would require a public vote.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. Susie, you mentioned economies of scale. Have we looked at the potential of contracting with Snow Isle instead to run our libraries rather than annexing in? And what kind of economies of scale could we potentially see? Not necessarily you know the answer now, but just throwing that out there.
And just to answer, we haven't looked at any of that, so if you ask us to, we will definitely begin, and I consider that an ask, so we will look at that as well.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Councilman
Thanks.
Ryan.
Thank you. Great question. Last year, when we had this same presentation, the recommendation was to not pursue a merger with Snow Isle at this time. And there was a list of reasons why, one of which was that they don't want us. What has changed since then?
Happy to answer that question. First, the library has grown, and so that makes it an option that would help more with the structural deficit than it did in previous years. Another big change is that the Snow Isle system is now AFSCME represented employees. Before, that was not the case, and that would have been I will just say undue harm to our employees. It would have been a very difficult merger when you have represented employees merging into a system that would be not represented employees. And so that is a big shift. At this point, I have had one single conversation with the leadership of Snow Isle, if we were interested, would you be interested in exploring? And the answer is yes. So I didn't want to go further than that without any discussion with this body.
Thank you. Thank you. I have some more questions. I'll follow up
Are you sure?
later or offline during the week when I can
Okay, you sure?
formulate
Okay.
them better. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Bowlby.
Would we need to change the charter if we chose to annex the library?
No.
Okay. Can you expand on that a bit? Because I will expand my question. There's a lot of talk about the library in the charter and the library board and all of the things that we must do, and that would become null and void if it wasn't our library,
Yeah,
so.
the charter provisions you're referring to talk about how the library is to be governed if we have a library. It doesn't require us to have a library.
Okay, thank you.
I a quick question, if you don't, just a quick answer, and that is the Snow Isle governance. How are the members of their governance committee selected? Does anyone know?
I do not know, but I can get that answer to you. I believe they're appointed. They're overrepresented by the city of Edmonds right now. There's obviously zero representation from the city of Everett, but we are not part of the Snow Isle system, so that makes sense. I would assume that if we were to explore this, that part of that negotiation would, just like it would be with the fire authority, would be around the governance to ensure that there's some representation from our residents.
No, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ryan, you gonna wait?
Yeah, I'll wait, I need
Okay.
to,
Thank you.
there'll be an email this week, though.
All right, there's our heads up.
I
All
look
right,
forward
thank
to it.
you.
Thank you.
On to our next subject.
Okay, the next revenue option is to move the fire department to a regional fire authority. For example, the South County Regional Fire Authority is funded by a combination of property tax with a max levy rate of $1 and a fire benefit charge that could pay up to 60% of the cost of providing fire service. Emergency medical services are funded separately through a dedicated property tax, transport fees, and the ground emergency medical transport reimbursements, or GEMT. Benefits of merging with South County RFA may include the economies of scale of a larger fire service and additional resources to improve infrastructure and enhance operations. An RFA merger would not result in the reduction in services. So a little bit about the fire benefit charge. Unlike property tax, which is based on a property's value, a fire benefit charge is based on building size and use, incorporating the idea that those who benefit more from fire protection services should pay more for those services, like large or high-risk structures. Ultimately, this funding structure benefits the single-family homeowner, as you'll see when I go over the potential impact of a merger. According to analysis on South County's RFA's website, when they were asking voters for implement the fire benefit charge, moving to a fire benefit charge from 100% property tax funding structure actually would save the single-family residential property owners about 10% on average. A fire benefit charge also allows for exemptions or reduced fees available for low-income and nonprofit emergency housing, religious entities, and low-income seniors or people with disabilities. As noted on the previous slide, the South County Regional Fire Authority incorporates a fire benefit charge into its funding model. So if the city were to consider joining a neighboring RFA, a decision would need to be made regarding how much, if any, the city would reduce its regular levy in order to reduce the initial impact and encourage voters to approve the ballot measure. Most cities who have joined a fire district or a regional fire authority have initially reduced their regular levies by some amount. An important factor in this decision is the creation of bank capacity in the city's regular levy. Any reduction in the city's regular levy would result in bank capacity that could be used to balance future budgets by raising the annual levy by more than 1% until that capacity was fully consumed. Still using the assessor's 2023 levy rates and average value of a single-family residence in Everett, this chart uses the Snohomish County funding structure to show the range of financial impact possibilities associated with joining the RFA.
Just to correct, you mean South County, not Snohomish.
Oh, sorry, yes, thank you. South County. The property owner impact is in the blue line and the city impact is in the green columns. At the base of the chart, you have a range of potential reductions to the city's levy rate. Starting from the left, if the city were to reduce its levy by 88 cents, we would realize an $8.4 million deficit reduction, and there would be no initial cost increase to the property owner. As you move to the right of the chart, you can see that the city's budget deficit reduction grows as the amount of levy reduction declines, from 8.4 million at an 88-cent reduction to 32 million with no reduction in the city's levy rate. However, at the same time, the initial cost to the property owner also rises from 0 at an 88-cent reduction to $484 a year at no reduction. And I will pause there. as that
Questions
concludes.
about the option and the Regional Fire Authority? Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. Suzie, great information, and I know some of you do know that for the last year or two that I was on council before, I was part of the exploration committee with Fire District 4, I believe it was. So a couple of questions come up here, and I don't expect you to know the answers, but I think one thing that I would really like to know is what economies of scale or let me try and think of the term. What savings would we expect to have just because of we're part of a bigger entity like South County Fire? So at some point, I'd like to get some idea about what those savings would be, as opposed to, say, joining Fire District 4, where I don't think we'd get probably too many, maybe some economies of scale, or if we were to join up, say, with Hat Island, where you probably get no economies of scale, right? So don't want to alarm any Hat Island residents out there. But so I think that'd be one question I would have. And then a second question I'd have is when we were studying, we're talking about Fire District 4, one thing that came up was that there are some entities within our city boundaries, notably other government entities that are not paying for the fire services or paying any taxes whatsoever for the fire services we provide. Is that still the case with those?
It's a payment in lieu of tax for the port, right?
So we do have the Port of Everett, which is not subject to.
Lease and lieu,
Yeah, they pay leasehold tax
Okay.
on the property that they rent to private individuals or entities, and but they do not pay any property tax for properties that they don't rent.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. Good. Okay. That's all I got
One
for
thing
now.
I just want to add too, I know the fire chief would probably say this as well. Our dance partners, I think is the way you've referred to it before, when we talk about potential fire departments we could merge with or form a regional fire authority with, are fewer and far between. A few years back when we were doing that exploratory, there were probably more partners than there are available now. And so the longer we go, the fewer opportunities we would have for this. So just something to be aware of. But we will try to get that information of what the different benefits of different partnerships would be.
Okay, Councilmember Vogely.
I guess it's the same kind of question as about the library that Councilmember Ryan brought up. And are people even, like, what has changed? Because it seems like and now there's even less people, less fire organizations to merge with. What is different now? Why is this a possibility?
This has always been a possibility. So this has always been seen as a possible revenue that would help with the structural deficit. All of these are revenue options. This one obviously has a greater impact than a snow aisle merger because of the size of this department and the cost of the shiny fire trucks and things that we have to provide. So the savings and impact to our deficit is greater. It's always been an option. I think this is a arguably more complicated option because the governance structure around fire districts, fire authorities is very complex, and it's often a lengthy process. So even if we were to go down this path, it might take longer than some of the other options that we have before us.
Okay.
But it is definitely an impactful option, remains an impactful option as I think we've always seen. We just have never taken the step as a body to put something like this on the ballot.
And I could just add that sort of over the last, like 4 or 5 years, South County Fire in particular, so their governance structure is kind of leveled out. So they formed the fire authority with Linwood. They had kind of a modified structure, and now they're represented by districts. So anyone that annexes in, they do something that's kind of similar to the districting commission that we do, where they just redraw those lines, and that's how their governance structure is set up. They've passed that fire benefit charge. They didn't have that a handful of years. I don't know when they passed it, but it's passed now. And then a handful of other cities that used to be contract cities, originally with Fire District 1, then South County Fire, are now annexed into the district, so, or into the fire authority rather. So those are a couple things that have maybe changed the landscape, in some ways clarified some of those things that meant that folks that wanted to talk to Fire District 1 about a fire authority like 15 years ago spent 10 years talking about it. And then some other cities spent like 4 years talking about it, and then like 18 months, and then 6 months. And so some of those things have kind of leveled out over the years as time has passed. But also to Councilmember Bader's question, that means that those variables have, they've kind of limited the choices, I guess, in some ways, so.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the one thing that I'm remembering the most is I remember the firefighters being willing to merge or whatever, and I'm not going to ask for anybody to answer if they're still willing. You can reach me offline.
Right.
That's all.
Councilmember Tui was, and then Bader.
Yeah, so I remember back in the day that they talked the fire benefit charge, that we can't do that. I don't think we can yet, but I think that's a legislative issue that would be great and would be helpful no matter what we did.
We're not looking at anybody.
But it's, I'm glad that this Snohomish County, if we do go that way, that they do have that fire benefit charge. I think that's really important to equalize the impact of those services across the city and
Yeah, it's
district.
unfortunate that cities don't have that tool.
Yeah.
Councilmember Bader.
Not to alarm anyone else, is Mukilteo still a dance partner that's out there?
They are, but I don't know what Mukilteo would say to
Understood.
that.
I hear you. A second, and the last question I would have is, when I was part of that study committee with Fire District 4, I seem to recall that we were told that the city of Renton managed to get itself into a situation where they were able actually to form their own RFA. And if we can find out more about that, I'd be kind of curious to know how they went about that and the mechanics that they went through. Thank you.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Two things. One of them, trying to keep in mind those of our community members who are less deep into this than I am and understand even less, which is sadly a fair amount that I don't understand. But my sense of it, magnitude-wise, is that for our average property values, for the average assessed value of house in this city, we're talking about something on the order of $5,000 plus per year in total taxes, of which the city gets something closer to $1,000 or so a year. And then looking at one data point here, the second data point on your impact on average value residents. So out of that 5,000 plus, 1,000 plus, the change for the minus 0.7 was like $100 extra per year, but would have a pretty large 13-point-some million dollar positive effect overall on the city's health. I'm just trying to simplify this some in my own mind to take these three options and see some kind of cardinal points on one of those, and that's one that strikes me as not outlandish. And then one other element along with that is, as I understand it, we've, as part of economizing measures for very good reasons, that we are also concerned about the long-term sustainability of, we have not really been funding much in capital improvements or that sort of thing for our fire facilities. Certainly is also given how expensive fire apparatus has become, those things we've approved. Is it reasonable to expect that this kind of thing would give us some improvements in those capital improvements in those facilities for fire?
I'm just going to jump in. We have funded a lot of improvements. I don't want to, fire is an essential service, and so we have replaced fire engines and ladder trucks. We have made improvements to fire stations to make gender-inclusive restrooms. We have invested a great deal. It's just a very expensive department. It's a very necessary department, Chief. No offense. It's a very costly one, and so. Certainly, we would hope to be able to do more at some point as a city, whether it's as part of a regional fire authority, as our city itself, because we have fire stations that we could totally replace. We have multiple city buildings that are in dire need of maintenance. Fire facilities are one of them, but I want to let residents know that the essential infrastructure in our fire department is strong, as is the equipment.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. And just for my point, I guess I have much more of a unique perspective. Just to answer your question there, Councilman Bader, about Renton, they did form an RFA with a fire district as met by the RCWs. So it was a small portion, so Renton became kind of more of the dominant department. But we can go in more detail later, but I want to answer that. I think one of the key factors here is really the ability to have the service benefit charge. And when the legislature offered that, that vehicle for fire districts, it really changed the landscape. And the intent was for a lot of these fire districts to form one larger one, as it brought up by other council members, the economy of scale. So my opinion is that I think Everett is big enough for economy of scale. And we did push through the service benefit charge bill for cities last year, and it got us farther than most people thought. So I think that is one key indicator. And if that isn't going to be a possibility, then perhaps we should be looking at other options. So, but I would like to emphasize what the mayor said. These things take quite a bit longer to implement, probably at least 1 to 2 years from a decision that this body makes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. Oh, more?
Just
Okay.
a little bit.
Little.
Economies of scale occurs when more units of a good or service can be produced on a larger scale with, on average, fewer input costs. In case anybody out there doesn't know what economies of scale means, because I have heard that phrase 16 times up here right now.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Next subject.
Okay, so the last funding of the funding alternatives we presented this evening is a general property tax levy lid lift. There are 4 choices in how a lift could be structured: a temporary one-time or multiple year lift, or a permanent one-time or multiple year lift. Temporary lifts would be most appropriate to fund one-time capital needs because the additional funding would only be needed for a short period of time to pay for that investment or project. Because the city's structural deficit is ongoing rather than a temporary problem, a temporary lift would not be a viable solution, as it would result in a serious funding cliff in 6 years when the lift expired. Based on our current forecast, the city would not be in any position to face a serious decline in funding at any time in the future. So to emphasize that point, this slide provides a visual comparison of the one-time temporary and the one-time permanent lifts, with the lift in green and the base levy in blue. As you can see with the temporary lift on the left, there is the initial bump in the first year, which grows at 1% per year for a total of 6 years. And then in year 7, the levy drops back to where it would have been if the lift had not taken place. By contrast, with the permanent one-time lift, there is the initial bump in the first year, and then the levy amount grows at 1% per year thereafter, with no loss of revenue once the lift expires. Permanent lift options include one-time or multiple-year lifts. With a one-time lift, the levy is raised by a voter-approved amount in the first year and then grows up to 1% per year in each year thereafter. With a multiple-year lift, the levy is raised by amounts approved by voters in each year of the lift and then grows up to 1% in each year thereafter. There is no funding cliff to resolve after the lift term expires in either of the permanent options. And that concludes my levy lift information.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm going to change it up here and go with Councilmember Toohey.
Okay, thank you. Susie, I did have my 2020 PowerPoint at home, I found. And you did do analysis on about a 60-cent levy lid lift median income. So if you can give us some fresh data on what that would be, and then what that would be for the impact on the deficit, that would be great, because, we do have a few numbers from the other two, but to kind of see the impact that would have, that'd be great.
Certainly, I can provide a similar range of
that'd be great.
lift amounts and what that would mean to the city, and then with that same average homeowner, what that would mean to that homeowner.
Great.
I can
Thank
follow
you.
up with that for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
You were saying that the numbers have to be approved by the voters, and for each one, it would be different, and I guess I got confused. Would there be one vote, one time for that first percent and then subsequent percents for the multiple year? You know, are they all voted on at one time? Or is it yearly as it goes up, each year the voters vote on it?
So one vote, with the one-time permanent lift, the ballot measure would indicate how much the city would be raising its levy in the first year, and then that would just bring up our highest lawful levy to that amount, which we would then be able to grow at 1% per year thereafter. In terms of a multiple year permanent levy lid lift, which is the other kind, the ballot measure would describe the method by which each year the levy would grow by more than 1%. It could be by a specified amount, it could be by tied to an index, but it would have to be described exactly in the ballot measure, and it would be voted on once.
And that often makes that multi-year levy lid lift very complicated to pass, because the ballot measure is just not very clear, whereas the other one is very concise. It's like, it's going to go up by this much, this is how much you're going to pay, and then it's kind of steady. The other one can be very hard to follow.
One more.
Yeah, so might we be able to do a ranked choice, kind of like we did for districts? Just putting an option out there. Can't answer it today, but yeah, ranked choice on levy lid lift.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bader.
Thanks. So actually, these two questions aren't specifically to levy lid list, so I don't want to interrupt somebody who might have a levy lid.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So back to the first one, where you touched on Everett Transit and community transit. By asking this question, I'm not suggesting I'm in favor of a merger, but in the 2 years I've been gone, extraordinary turn of events. I mean, 2 years ago, Everett Transit was in crisis, and we needed to deal with it. Are we confident for what period of time that Everett Transit is well-funded?
You know, I will have to get back to you on that. I haven't seen their long-term forecast for a little while. They maintain that internally in the department. I do know that they've received a significant amount of additional federal funding as a result of the pandemic, and that has turned their prospects around, at least I'm sure for the next several years. I don't think it's a permanent. Yeah, it's not a permanent fix, but it got them past that hump.
Gotcha.
For the time being.
I just want to, we all want to be good stewards, and I don't want to pass on to a council 10 years from now that all of a sudden we're back to that, and then maybe we should have dealt with it, sooner. Second question, and this connects with this whole economy of scale idea too, and I know it's more complex, but wonder if we should at least think about how we have a huge amount of our urban growth area that we haven't annexed that could provide support. I can't imagine there isn't a significant number of people from the Everett area out in South Everett outside of the city that are using, for instance, library services. I assume that if we annexed more of South Everett, that would come into the Everett Fire. We provide our fire services, no longer South County Fire. Again, I'm not looking for an answer right now, but just throwing out there some consideration about how annexing a significant part of our urban growth area, which is pretty big, probably have the biggest unannexed urban growth area of any city in the Puget Sound area. And so just wondering, could that give us some more economies of scale if we really pushed on an annexation effort, which I think, frankly, the region or regional authorities expect us to do at some point. Thanks.
Yeah, I think, we haven't looked at annexation to the south seriously for a number of years. What I do recall from the last round is that it's primarily residential in nature, and which means that you don't have the same tax base as if you were to annex significant industrial or commercial property. So I think that that would just require a lot of study.
I do think there is, I mean, the area around Mariner, perhaps some industrial areas south of Payne Field that might be in our UGA. So throwing that out there.
I
Thanks.
think that's a good question about annexation, but for time and sake, I think it might be even a good subject for our council retreat. And I know the tax
Yeah.
structure has changed because people are, instead of going to the mall, purchasing things, they are going online. So it's generated some other sources of revenue. If that's okay, we can, yeah, no, I thank you for it. It's a good question. I think that may be one thing that the council here is somewhat more unified on is perhaps that issue. Councilman Ryan, I saw you with your smart pen.
Thank you. Also, in the last 2 years, Everett Transit received a lot of money from the Move Ahead Washington plan. So when we adopted the Free Fare for Youth program, we got a lot of money from the state through the Move Ahead Washington plans. I think that helped to stabilize their books quite a bit as well. Yes to annexation. Every time I look at the map of Everett and I look over in Councilmember Zarlingo's district and that funny little ziggy-zag line and over near Silver Lake, and there's obvious boundaries that should be there. But anyways, looking forward to talking about that. So I pulled up the slides from our budget committee on May 3rd. And one of the options included at that time was the Parks District and Metropolitan Parks District. And that recommendation was also to not move forward with it because it wasn't really penciling out. So even though the library, the recommendation has shifted, I wanted to double check that the recommendation has remained the same for doing a Parks District.
So Snohomish County is actually in the process of considering a countywide park levy of sorts, and they're in the very initial phases of just like, what would this be and how would it look? And so that is why we have completely backed off of that as something that we should consider at this time, because obviously if there was a countywide levy, we would be a part of that and would receive a benefit for our Everett parks through something like that. But in general, metropolitan park districts are for park expansion. And there's not as much funding for maintaining services. So it's a great tool for ensuring your parks have funding ongoing, but not, or to expand, but not necessarily a great tool for maintaining what you already have. But we're interested, and our staff are a part of that exploration with the county at this time.
Great, that's good news, thank you. I guess just as a general comment too, and to go back to my 7 other questions today about timeline, I'm concerned that we're really behind the ball, especially because we had literally this exact same conversation last May. Decisions hadn't been made, things hadn't necessarily been moving forward. When I was at the National League of Cities conference in November, I spoke with some other folks from Washington State who had done similar things, and they already had infographics and done a lot of outreach. So I'm worried that we might be running behind on getting the information out to neighbors and community members and voters to let them know whatever it is we're going to be doing. And so for timing and time-wise, I'm wondering what our filing deadlines would be if we were to go to the voters, and also what other initiatives are coming up on the ballot, like a Parks District. I know the Port has their boundary expansion that's probably going to go on the August ballot. Maybe the county has some initiatives. I'm just concerned that if voters are presented with too many options asking for revenue, for increases in revenue, then either nobody gets anything, or so I'm just want to take a look at like, what does the ballot look like, and when do we need to file for it, and how do we get the information out before then?
If I may just jump in here, great, thanks for bringing that up. I'm just thinking what's the first step? I mean, we have to make a decision. I mean, Council Ryan gave you a smorgasbord of things we need to consider. Obviously the first step is some sort of decision, so where are we on that? If we wanted to go through with one of these 3 options.
So, yeah, definitely. So the first step is staff does need direction from council on what option or options you want to pursue. Obviously, time is of the essence now. We would be under a very short timeline to get any of these options on the ballot. It would definitely require a concerted effort of everybody involved in order to make that happen. So that is definitely where we're at, is let us know what your desire is to move forward with one or more of these options, and then we can go back and develop a timeline for that option, as well as some possible options for structure of the ballot measure.
So are we thinking here a month? And I kept Councilmember Ryan off a little bit. I'll make sure she gets answered. So, the first thing is we have these ideas and we've discussed them a lot. Okay, now I think we're looking for some rubber here. This council here is saying, all right, we've been through a lot over the last couple of years. And so specifically, what kind of timeline do we need to wrestle with some of these options?
Well, I will say that this is both way too late and also the best time to have the conversation. So May, you guys don't see it, but these two in particular, that's like their prime time. They're super busy developing the budget. So they presented information to you, and I remember it. It was among the first few of your council meetings that I've sat here. And I heard a lot of voices that said, we need to be talking about this, we need to make decisions. And we really did. We really did need to do those things. And I know we put more thought into it, and they've been busy. We're back at kind of, I think, relatively, theoretically, if there is a lull in the finance department, now is the time, right? There's not, but they're not developing next year's budget next week, so that's a helpful thing. August ballot timelines, that's a May, action, you vote, it goes on the ballot, and education campaigns, information campaigns, that can happen as part of the city. Outside the city, other things can happen. November ballot, that's right before the primary, so it's the Monday before, it's that, whatever that August date is, August 2nd, give or take. Both those dates are close, and that's a decision about what timing makes sense. You mentioned the port expansion. I've got that question of what else might be on the ballot. It's always hard to ascertain that, countywide. I think the Metropolitan Parks District is probably a little farther out. I don't see that as being something that is slated for a 2024 ballot, so I can tell you that now. You can always take the time that you need to get the answers that you need. If you want to wait another month, we'd
As soon as
like you
possible.
to do it faster than that. We'd like you to do it in a couple weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. Anything that's less than a month, I guess, is where our staff are probably at. And I'm always more aggressive than these two, and that's why they always have the perfect information, and I want to push you a little bit, so, yeah.
Councilmember Ryan, did you, and then?
Yes, thank you. As a suggestion, not directing staff, in your role as our government relations director, would you be willing to have a conversation with the county or other local governments about things that they might be putting on the ballot this year?
Yes, when I said I wrote it down as a question, that meant that I was going to go work on it, so, yeah.
Thank
I
you.
mean to be circumspect, yeah, got it.
And I see it too as not just the finance, the burden's not just on the finance department, there's our outreach and engagement department, and, a lot of people that are working to get the word out and engage the community in our neighborhoods and billboards and everything.
The first step is direction from you on which one of these we would want to pursue, which one or multiple. And then from that, we do that backwards timeline. Some of them are probably November. Some of them could be May, but that's pretty aggressive. We do know from previous polling that a presidential election year is a really good time for us to explore revenue. Oddly enough, that's the time that these types of initiatives perform better as when you look at other cities. So the window of time is this year, is a good time. And if you wanted to put something on the November ballot, the education campaign from the city could happen up until that August, and then we're kind of done, and then it becomes an external process. So any of these, you kind of have to think about that timeline. because what you said is absolutely correct. Whatever you decide, we have to hit the ground running now to help our residents understand where we're at.
Great. And I think with as many briefings that we've had, and I know when we all got onboarded as well, we sat down and talked about it quite a bit. I feel prepared to move forward with a decision as early as next week to get a few extra questions answered, and I really do think we cannot waste any more time. I do think the presidential election years is good timing because it has such a higher voter turnout. I think it's a better sampling of what the will of the residents are and the voters are. So I think that is good timing. So I would like to see a decision next
Second.
week.
Councilmember Vogely was up, and then a quick comment, just keep in mind we have our retreat coming up. So this might be a good time to get all our questions in the staff. Obviously, you know our timeline's coming up. I'm assuming you're prepared to answer some questions and be prepared for that retreat. We haven't solidified the,
We'll be ready for January 31st, and we'll be ready for January 17th.
okay, thank you. And then Councilmember Vogely?
I am assuming, because it's been kicked around for a while, that, are we going to take a vote on, okay, we're going to put this on the ballot or not? And if it's a vote, then we, or whoever is the president, can put that on any agenda and we can move forward. So like previously, we just haven't moved forward because just giving information of what we think you might want to do, that's not that's not valid. We need to like be specific as a body, majority vote, do it. And my question was going to be, but I think you already answered it. We can speak about it until August.
Well, if you choose the August or May, depending on whether.
We can speak about it.
Until you vote to put it on the ballot.
Okay, so that is my question. So if we voted to put it on the ballot next week, then the city can't do anything?
But if you tell us next week to explore XYZ, we can talk about it a lot.
Okay.
There's a couple steps, so you could just vote tonight and say, hey, staff, we'd like you to explore two things. You could do that on the 17th. You could do that through the form of a resolution. It's probably what you want to do. It's a little more official. And then eventually you'll pass an ordinance to actually place that on the ballot. And that deadline for the auditor, that direction, right, is the May date for August, or the August date for
Okay.
November. And that's the date at which the city attorney will give us good guidance on the kind of unbiased information that we can provide to the community, but sort of the limitation on the conversations that can happen at council in particular. So you can always have, well, anyways, I'll leave it at that. I don't know more than that on that topic, so.
And I appreciate your input here, especially some of the timelines and the sense of urgency. Since this is a new year and 3 new options presented to us, I think it'd be a good opportunity to ask more questions and make a decision. I think, I'm just going to say the retreat is kind of a good pivot point where we're all together in a public meeting. That might be one of our best times to make a decision. Either these 3 or a different option or none. Councilmember Zarlingo, do you have?
Well, I had about a half dozen questions, but Jennifer, Susie, Mayor Franklin, they answered all of them except for one. It relates back to Councilmember Bader's question. The timing for any sort of annexation, and I get this question occasionally with respect, given where I live and what Councilmember Ryan said, and half of the neighborhood I'm in is in the county, and about half those people know that they're in the county or the city. So is that timing like a 1 or 2 or 3 year thing in terms of implementing an annexation?
That's fair.
Okay.
It's one of those things.
Well, I'm thinking if I take the mean, then I guess that's out of the bounds of what we're trying to consider right now. We're not going to solve anything.
I'll send, I'll put together some information about that. There's a bunch of different methods for annexation, and some can be a little bit quicker and some can be longer. Maybe the best path today under the current state law is developing an agreement with the county. So that's a negotiating agreement, so.
And that does result in, then it's again a vote by the by the residents of those annexed, or those areas?
There's
to be
different
annexed?
methods, so
Oh.
it could
Oh,
be a
okay.
vote, or there's other ways too, so.
Okay, but
Whilst-
I guess I don't want to occupy your time on any, that is not going to solve our most pressing problem here now, the focus, so I don't want to divert any effort from that.
If there's strong interest, I think that's a really good conversation to have. I mean, it's a big initiative. I keep hearing, oh, annexation, ask Jennifer about it. I'm like, oh, I'm one human, and that is like a whole consultant job. Like, it's like a team of people that would do an annexation. So if there's interest in that, we should really talk about what that looks like and your interest in it, because maybe it's 1 or 2 or 3 years. You know, if you want to do it, you want to start.
Yeah.
Whenever you start, that's when that clock starts, so.
Okay, and I don't want to
yeah.
get diverted,
And
because
I didn't say more, because Council President Schwab said he wanted to
Yeah, well,
save
we
that for
have
another
some really
day.
important options here to look at. So is there any more questions about these? And I appreciate the feedback about annexation. That's something that we can work together further, I think.
Yeah, I support it.
So how about, so specifically here, I appreciate everyone's comments, but on these 3 options, since we have Susie and Heidi here, any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, one, and it's about it.
I just about
Which-
pushed stop.
I can wait till the retreat, but no, don't. Okay, which one might you recommend we choose?
She took the words right out of my mouth. You know, the issue is that there are different various levels of potential with each one of these options. I think that there is a lot of potential of benefits to the community with each one of these options. And some of them will get us further down the road of fiscal sustainability than others. But as I look long-term, you know, unless there's a fix to the 1% limit, even if we write ourselves, you know, for next year, and the way we do it brings us enough revenue, additional revenue to stave off the returning deficit for some number of years, there's going to be a point when we'll have to go back to the voters again unless the 1% limit is resolved. Because at no point I can imagine that the cost of providing any city services is going to be 1% per year or less. I just
Thank you.
don't see that happening.
Thank you very much for that answer, and it just occurred to me that we could choose all 3.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation and answering the questions. And thank you, Mayor and Jennifer, jumping in too. At this point, there's no further business except for take a recess.
Council President, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think I may have miscited the RCW that we're relying upon for
Okay.
executive session. The correct site is RCW 423110 1I.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. So we'll do a recess for 5 minutes, plus travel time to the community room, with action to follow. Okay, council has returned from executive session. City Attorney David Hall, you have a suggestion for a motion?
Yes, this matter concerns water damage, or a claim by Joe and Teresa Fisher for water damage to their residence at 2615 Maple Street, caused by a defect in the city's water supply system. In May of last year, council approved a preliminary payment of $40,000. We've now reached a final proposed settlement with the couple based on our adjuster's estimate and discussions with the Fishers. The final payment would be an additional $57,607.01 to be precise. And that would resolve the claim. We would get a release. That would be the end of it. So we're hoping to get a motion to authorize payment of $57,607.01 to Joe and Teresa Fisher.
Thank you. Do I have a motion, a second?
I shall make that motion.
And second the motion.
Thank you. I heard a motion and a second. Clerk, will you make the roll?
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. With no further business, we are now adjourned.